What's up, everybody? Welcome to our recap of HBO's The Last of Us Episode 6. Can't wait to talk more about this universe that we are digging so much and from a new perspective. I'm Josiah Leroy. With me today, as always, my co-host, Mr. Baba Yaga, John Fick. John, we're like less than a month away from John Wick Chapter 4.
That's
Can you
true.
believe it?
I actually can believe it. I'm so excited for that movie. It feels like it's been forever since Chapter 3. But
It is the perfect blend of just unrealistic action and Keanu Reeves. Am I
and
right?
silly lore that I'm very interested in. And I think that this is perfect. Like this is a perfect time to sunset that franchise. I've always been asking questions like, oh, what's up? What how's this lore? Like what does this mean? What does this mean? I'm at the point where this is the last one and I'm happy about that, but not in a bad way. It's perfect.
It has to be. And I kind of thought that's what 3 would be. And then that leaves off on a very, very much saying, hey, 4 is happening very soon.
Right.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Okay.
But yeah, you take time off, you realize okay, I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it.
It's ridiculous. I love it. It is what it is. But
it is.
Hey, John Wick. We're going to be talking about that with John Fick in roughly a month or so. We're going to be talking about The Last of Us here today. We'll get to some spoilers, but for the first few minutes, we will keep it spoiler free. So episode 6 here, we're live on twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. You can watch every episode of our shows on youtube.com/thegeekiverse. And of course, listen on podcast services around the globe. That being said, John, you've got a really good, timely, appropriate beer.
I do,
we
yeah.
So reserve our beer for Busy Sticks, but what do we got here?
Correct, yeah. You and I chat about beer every time we open the episode of our gaming podcast, Busy Sticks, but I've got a really, really timely one. So Thin Man, local Buffalo, New York brewery, put out Clickers. It's an IPA. It is very Last of Us theme. We've got the guitar there. We've got the zombies. We've got it all. Very, very cool. You and I have been waiting to get our hands on this, hoping they would distribute it, and they did. It's out there. We can get it, and it's really good, actually. I mean, I say actually, but they make awesome beer, but not just for a Last of Us beer,
No, they've got high standards, I think, especially locally. So glad to hear you're enjoying that. I can't wait to get my hands on it. Going to Wegmans this weekend or Consumers. We'll see what happens first. But yeah, John, we'll get into some of our reactions on this episode quick. I wanted to just quick aside here. Everyone, I think that watches our content knows I'm sentimental and I appreciate things. So I'm listening to 4 Years Strong on the way home from work today. That's a show that John and I got to see in the fall. So mid-November, I think was that show we got to see at Town Ballroom with some of our favorite bands. We had Knuckle Puck as well on that tour, and just there's fun moments throughout the years that I recall in going to concerts, and this one was awesome. We had a great time, sold out show, and 4 Years Strong, very vocal, very in your face, very energetic. And at one point they say, hey, this song here, it's dedicated to whoever you're with here. Hopefully that's your best effing friend. And I just was looking at the stage. I kind of had the feeling, but John was there, put his arm around me. I put my arm around him. It was just a good moment. But I'm thinking about The Last of Us and relationships and in best friends of all sorts here. And that's how I look at John. And it's fun that we get to do this and talk about The Last of Us and talk about video games. Soon we're going to be talking about The Mandalorian. But my tangent there is really just to say I appreciate you, man.
You're trying to make me cry right now? We're live on Twitch trying to make me cry?
I'm not trying to, but we can talk about Avengers Endgame if you want me to get you there.
We're talking about The Last of Us. If you want to make me cry, just talk about this show, man.
It's very true. I just, grateful for you, man. Lots of good stuff in our lives and what we do at the Geekiverse. And really a special shout out because we do this. Yes, we do this live, but you really have the brunt of the hard work when it comes to editing and setting up the shows and making sure the live streams work. So if the audience doesn't know that, they should. John is the reason we're able to really do a lot of this and figured out how to record from home just about 2.5 years ago. So, John, I appreciate you, and that's my quick aside.
Dude, I appreciate you. I love doing this stuff, man. And if it was with anybody else, maybe I wouldn't care so much to put in the effort, but I love it. And, this is my outlet. This is where we get to talk about the stuff we love, but the technical stuff you mentioned, that's the stuff I enjoy. I like to kind of just make things work. And we almost had an issue making stuff work today. So very, very timely talking about that.
That's another thing I didn't even think of. We ran into some tech issues earlier. Lingo, I have No idea. I don't speak that language, but John does. He figured it out. Here we are. We're talking about it. But I agree. I think the fun of what we do is talking about this with each other, but we've got this kind of chemistry. I think that we've done hundreds of these shows over the years, and that's what makes it really special. We're on the same page with it. We could, for all intents and purposes, not have an itinerary, figure our way through a show, and that's the special stuff. So kudos to you, man. Appreciate you, and looking forward to talking to The Last of Us.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you back.
Anytime at all. Episode 6, we're going to keep it spoiler free here for just a few minutes. If you have not watched the episode, I encourage you to bookmark this. Come back. We'd love to have this discussion. We'd love to have you hear it. So do that. But John, impressions on what we got from this episode on HBO.
I need somebody to do a deep dive, a supercut as to how many times I have or will say this, but this was my favorite episode so far. Like I think I maybe said it 3 times so far. I maybe at least 3 times. Yeah, this
will be 4 for me.
Yeah, this is my favorite episode yet. Like, oh my god, they keep doing it. This is like we had this we had something cool happen where we had a couple months pass off screen, right? That, not a spoiler, first couple of minutes of the show, they tell you, was it 2 or 3 months later, right? Time goes by and we see a new Joel and Ellie. We see a Joel and Ellie that like are really comfortable with each other, and we see some really cool scenes and how that plays out. Like they have a relationship now. It's not budding of a relationship. We talked about like how like, oh, this is there. You can see Joel's finally starting to crack open a little bit. He's asking questions. He's a little bit more friendly, and Ellie is obviously taken to him. We're past that. They are like a duo at this point. And it was very, very cool to see that in this episode, and very cool to see it in this setting, and to pull from one of, if not the most iconic scene in the video game that gets recreated here. Stuff we're going to get all into when we go through this, but yeah, they did it again. They do it every week, and this was the best episode so far, in my opinion.
So I struggle with the idea of, a lot of times I'll see content, or maybe it's the latest MCU movie back when we're talking phases 2 and 3, where I'm like, hey, that was my favorite. It's the most recent thing I saw.
Recency bias. It's a real thing.
It is. But I think I've also gotten better at it over time, where I try to step back. I think about what I liked about an episode, what made it so hot on my mind, where I'm like, this is it. This is the one that I'm so excited about. And I can separate them a little bit more. But I think this show keeps upping the ante every week. I really do. And it's not like a huge change in quality, because it is consistent, but it's a little bit at a time. So when you're talking about a highly consistent show and one that gets just a step better every week, that is saying a lot, and maybe is the highest compliment we can give it. So I'm with you. I think this might be my favorite episode yet. And how it blends what we've seen in the series so far and ties back to the video game and some of the locales and some of the scenery and some of the Easter eggs, which we're going to get into, all of it. I love. We've got 3 episodes left. We got our preview for what happens next week, which is, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, if you do know what's coming, if you don't know what's coming, buckle up. That one is going to be an emotional shit show. It is what it is. But I'm, despite these high expectations, I'm constantly blown away. And we'll get into spoilers here momentarily.
Yeah. So you mentioned there's 3 episodes left. We know what the next one's going to be. Man, it feels so perfect. Like that, like goes without saying. Like obviously we trusted them with this property, but man, like it feels perfect. We've got 1 episode that's going to be the Left Behind DLC. That's going to be a prequel story for Ellie. It's going to be kind of, it's going to be Ellie's story for the most part. That's going to be the entire episode. Then we've got 2 left to wrap this up. And you think about, if you've played the game like we have, like you think about all these bullet points that they've got to hit. 60 minutes, 120 to maybe like 150 minutes between that. Like, oh my God, they're going to crush this. And like the pacing has just been perfect. And like to be able to have the time to spend with Bill and Frank, and have the time to spend with Ellie coming up here in this prequel episode that we know we're going to get, like they did such a good job. Like 9 episodes, I thought was like, is that going to be enough for a game that can be 17, 18 hours? But we've talked about it this whole series so far. They do, and I have got a note about it very specifically. Like they're doing a good job of adapting stuff, and we'll get to some spoilers and some specifics later. But yeah, they're crushing it.
I I can't believe in a way that it has been paced so perfectly, because you could argue that there's too much packed into these episodes prior to seeing them. Like there's too much story to pack into them. There could also not be enough episodes to do this. So you think about it, and say what you will about the Bill and Frank episode. That was largely a side story.
The bottle episode. You don't need to watch that.
You could skip that and still be on pace with what you need for the rest of the series.
You'd be stupid, but you could.
They didn't really burn an episode, right? Like they didn't waste an episode. You get 9, so really you got to tell your story in 8, but it has worked. So I'm with you where I thought as we got closer here, because the Left Behind DLC's been on my mind since the series started. I thought that was going to be episode 3, by the way. Wasn't. And here we are, and I'm like, all right, there's 3 left. What's going to happen? Oh, okay, that's going to happen next week. I know exactly where we're going for 8 and 9, and it's going to be insane. But it just fit beautifully into all those bullet points. So,
and before we get into like spoilers for this episode and break it down here, and like no spoilers for the game, I'm half expecting something to be very different, and I don't know what it could be, but I'm just half expecting us to like have our jaws dropped as people who played the game be like, oh my god, they changed that. I don't know. I just have this feeling. And I don't even know what it could be, because like everything kind of just has to line up the way it should line up, the way we know the story is supposed to go. But I don't know. I have this gut feeling that we're going to have a conversation that's not what we're expecting.
I'm with you. And I think that's a good middle ground to be in, because think about this. How could you recreate a compelling story for a large audience that has largely played this game? There's some that have not, obviously, as well. But to keep us guessing and have the same emotional impact, like that's like retelling Star Wars, knowing what's going to happen, but still finding it super emotional. That's close to unprecedented. And that's another reason this is so special. So let's dive in. We're going to cut this off now. We're going to go into spoilers here for episode 6 of The Last of Us. Again, pause this if you haven't seen it. But John, I'm going to lean on you as we do to take you through John's notes for this episode.
Yeah, let's hop in. We're just going to kind of break down the episode scene by scene, talk about some stuff that stands out to us. This is episode 6, and it's called Kin, and that is a something. I like how they're doing that, where like you click into the episode on HBO Max and they don't tell you the episode title.
Yeah,
like they specifically
awesome.
They'll just show you episode 6, and I don't know if that's like by design, because Game of Thrones did the same thing. That's just the way HBO Max works. I don't know if that's a decision to like. So you don't know, and you go back and check the title, but it's working well for me. Me and Courtney every week are like, okay, what was that episode? We back out, go back in, we see what it was called. So it's cool to see that after the fact. A lot of shows play with that, like they show you the title and like you have to kind of figure out how it works. It's kind of fun to do it the opposite way, like watch the whole thing and then go back and see how the title relates. But this one relates very well. It's called Kin. We open this one up, Joel and Ellie on the road. Months later, I forget if it's 2 or 3 months. So you know that they've been spending some time together. 3 months, Joel confirms here. But we also have a season change. So we're in the winter now. In the video game, that that's like the chapters of the video game. You've got the 4 different seasons, and like the game is almost broken up into quarters. So seeing winter is pretty cool. We know we're kind of making some progress, and that it shows the time jump as well. That opening scene, they find this older couple. Joel kind of holds them hostage, and they're looking for directions. They have no idea where the hell they are. Like, we're lost. Show us where we are. I thought that older couple was great. The wife was kind of just like, these guys aren't going to shoot us. Like, I made them soup. Of course I made them soup. It's cold out there. I don't care. Like, we're fine. They just need information. Like, we know what we're doing here. We've been through this. But that whole interaction with, you made him soup, was awesome.
I love that sequence. I love that couple. I love everything they talked about there. I gotta say, reminded me of my mom a little bit. Like, she's that.
I can totally see that. Totally see that.
That is Lori right there. Just being like, oh, come on. They were hungry. They needed some soup. Just like that. That was awesome. Yeah, I love the playfulness of all of that. The slight humor, even with Joel and Ellie there with Ellie coming down from the balcony too early. Like that was really good. The
Yeah.
more they play into that, the more I'm enjoying it.
And it shows you a bit of the progression of Joel and Ellie's relationship. Whereas like 3 months ago, Ellie would have listened to Joel and she would have stayed up there and like realized that he's the adult and he makes the decisions and what I say goes, right? But now she's like, no, I know this guy. It's not a big deal. I can go down there. He's just being an idiot. He's just being overprotective. I'm gonna come down. So like
It's like last episode with Sam and Henry, where she's like, he only speaks asshole.
exactly right. So you love to see it. So that interaction's great, but I love that they pull something from the video game that happens in part 1 and in part 2. Joel pulls his famous "your answer better be the same as hers" technique. So he pulls the gun. He said, "I've already asked her where are we on the map. You tell me, and your answer better be the same." So that's a bit of a more intense moment in the video game that's happening at a much more intense time. This is a little bit more playful, but it's cool to see them use that. Like that's Joel's technique, and we see someone in part 2 use the same technique as well. Very cool to see.
Dude, I gotta be honest. I got nervous there. I was like, oh
yeah,
this is where we're going. Just knowing the video game, because you're right. That's like an intense interrogation with different characters in the game, which wouldn't have worked out so much with the couple we've chosen here for TV. But for those of us that played the game, I was like, oh gosh, are we going in this direction?
Joel's pulling that card on these old people. Like they're so sweet. She made you soup.
They're the sweetest. There was that, and then there was I love how the husband goes, did you lie or tell the truth?
Yeah, it's really
I like that a lot. That was pretty awesome. So
yeah,
that
so
played
cool.
right into their dynamic again.
For sure. Really, really cool. And then the older woman talks about how you don't go past that river. It's the river of death or whatever. And Ellie has the lines like, "You're not going to scare us." And she looks like, scared him. And you see Joel is like, yeah, he understands the reality of this world. So just more fun stuff. But there's a serious undertone to all of it because it's all very real. It's all very real still. We're still in the apocalypse. That hasn't changed. My next note here is their relationship is finally not tense. Joel's guard is down. Like they're coexisting. They can kind of just sit around, talk about things like, what would you do if you could do anything? If this wasn't the apocalypse, they have that conversation after they leave this house and they're camping out. Ellie asks them, if you could do anything and things were back to normal, what would you do? If this were to happen in episode 1 or 2, Joel would be like, shut up, go to sleep. I got to take guard, right? He would be stoic. He would shut that down. But he sits back and he's like, oof, if I could do anything, we get a cool little drop here. Joel says, I would have a farmhouse with sheep. And if you have played a video game that might be the sequel to the first Last of Us, you might get a cool reference there. And it doesn't end there because Ellie answers the question as well, and she divulges her love for space, which, correct me if I'm wrong, did we get any of that in the first game? Was there any side conversations? Did she talk about space at all? She could have. There's a lot of that little dialogue, but I might be mixing it with part 2 where that is a really, really kind of impactful story beat.
I don't believe so. If we did, it was in a passing line and very small.
Wasn't focused on.
In the second game, that is a focal point, especially later on. And when she mentions that, I was like, "Oh man!"
And it was cool because it was two things from part 2 that like were very like, oh, you guys are setting up part 2 so well already. And because like, quick tangent, I don't think, and not even I don't think this. There was never a part 2 planned when The Last of Us was created. When the game was created, it was created as a standalone experience. They didn't intentionally leave open threads to be answered in a sequel. The decision to make a sequel happened after the fact, and that's totally fine. Everything works fine. Like it's still a great cohesive story, but they didn't leave these open threads like they are leaving in the show. And not even open threads, but just things that we know are going to be callbacks once we get to season 2. That stuff really wasn't there.
It's the benefit of hindsight with having done that second game and crafted that world and story further, and of course having Neil Druckmann on this, and because they know that, they can leave these subtle hints. And we joke about it all the time where like, what's a bad example of this? Like Solo, a Star Wars story, where they're like the name drops and the nicknames and events that happen just to talk about them. We don't need all of that. But this is very meaningful because for those of us, again, it's the two perspectives. We played The Last of Us Part 2. We understand why that's so sweet and impactful. But if you haven't watched it, I think you're going to think about it still. It's easy for me to say, but I think if I heard that line, I'd be like, oh, okay,
At the
that's really cool.
at the very least, when it pays off in part 2, you'll remember it from season 1, right? You'll have like, even if these things are kind of throwaway lines for you now, you're gonna watch season 2 and be like, oh my god, Joel did mention this, Ellie did mention this in season 1. So really cool stuff that they didn't set up for us in the games because they didn't have the benefit of that. But yeah, awesome. They keep continuing to evolve this story rather than just adapt it one for one, which we've been preaching and they've been crushing. So we move on a little bit. Joel and Ellie get past this river of death and they get surrounded by cowboys. Literally, people on horses with bandanas over their face. There's a quick interrogation. There's a tense moment where we think Ellie might get outed because they got this dog that can sniff infections. So like, if any of you are infected, tell me right now, you're going to die. And this wasn't in the game at all. There was never, this encounter where someone had to test Ellie's, level of infection. Not with a dog that's going to rip them to shreds. So that was intense for a second until it immediately wasn't. And Ellie's on the ground laughing and having the greatest time with this dog. And it's so freaking cute. And Bella Ramsey, like, what an awesome portrayal of Ellie, but just the range to be this serious, badass girl that we're kind of going to get it in a couple scenes later at Jackson. But have her just like collapse with this puppy and just this girlish charm is incredible. Really cool.
Yep. We forget that she's so young at times, I think. And, that sequence was intense, even though we kind of knew.
We knew it had to progress, right? We knew eventually it was going to be a good situation, but yeah, we didn't get that encounter in the game, so that was intense.
There was some gray area there, and what Pedro Pascal does really well here and alludes to later on in this episode is how scared he was. And I was thinking myself, for some reason, quickly, I was put into those shoes. What am I going to do if that dog gets close and starts losing it? Am I going to go rogue and try to save Ellie and also probably get mowed down? Like, I'm going to have to make a choice here. And I think he's at the point where, he's starting to view her. He is, for sure, starting to view her as a daughter figure. How deep, we're not 100% sure yet at this point in the episode, but a decision has to be made there, and it's so intense, and you can see some of the psychological things that are happening with him and how he hyperventilates and has chest pains. And you're right, it couldn't have gone better. The dog connects with her, and it's this beautiful, innocent moment with the dog and the child, really.
Yeah.
It's great. And that's again, Bella Ramsey. I'm going to beat this drum every single episode we record. I love her portrayal of Ellie.
Me too.
So much so that like I'm almost to the point of this being my definitive version. Saying a lot, I know. But that moment was a really nice moment because it wasn't in the game and it was so intense all the same.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that's even like on your radar to even like consider the fact that this might be your definitive Ellie. I don't think I could ever come to that because I think that Ashley Johnson's Ellie is my favorite character of anything, full stop. Talk about movies, talk about the stuff we love, superheroes and Iron Mans and other video games and your Nathan Drakes, whatever, man. Talk about whatever you want. I think Ellie from The Last of Us is my favorite character, full stop. Ashley Johnson's Ellie. But I just love that I can even like hear that and not be appalled, right? Like I freaking love what Bella Ramsey is doing. Like she's having such a good time and she's doing such an awesome job being her own Ellie, but like obviously being a very, very similar Ellie because that's a core character to this story and you can't change it too much, if at all. But she's bringing her own spin to it and she's doing awesome.
She's coloring within those lines because you can't change this character up too much. Again, from what made it special. In the games, that's who she is. She's this rebellious, intense individual. We're getting that, but we're also getting a little more of the innocent side here, and I think Bella brings that out and fleshes it out just a tad more. But hey, tomato at this point. To say that she's even in the conversation is
awesome.
Again, speaking to the quality of this production.
For sure. So we move on. They get past that encounter. Everything's cool. Joel name drops. He says, hey, I'm looking for, he says, my name is Joel. They don't ask who he's looking for, whatever. He says, I'm looking for my brother. What's your name? My name's Joel. And we can immediately tell that somebody in that group knows that their buddy Tommy at home has a brother named Joel. That happens to be his wife Maria, but we'll get there when we get there. So we get back to Jackson. Something that, again, a theme throughout this entire show, but definitely in this episode, stuff that we are getting from part 2 that we didn't really get much of in part 1. Yes, in the game, there is a reunion with Joel and Tommy, but it's not in Jackson. It's at this little dam, like outside of the city where they meet a little bit. You never get to see that city of Jackson until part 2. And man, when I say that I was just floored at the recreation of Jackson, dude, like spending time there in part 2 was so special, and to see it recreated so perfectly, like the vibes were immaculate. It was perfect. I loved it so much. So
Yeah, I'm with you. As soon as we got there, I was like, oh boy, we got our string lights, we got this little town, we got everything. It's another nice blend of what makes more sense in the TV medium, and as Neil has said on the podcast, what makes for the best story.
yes,
And that is it so far.
right, and they get to spend their time in Jackson, and they do great job developing some of the stuff there. But we're in Jackson. Ellie and Joel are getting a bite to eat. They're eating like savages. Both of them are holding forks like they've never held a fork before. But to be fair, they've been stealing rabbits to get by at this point.
Oh, quick on that. Did you think we were gonna get the rabbit scene, like the famous
like
arrow through the?
do I think we will still?
I thought we might have gotten it in this episode.
Maybe. I didn't think about that at all. But just because of the
did.
fact where we were in the story, I think we still might.
We still might. I thought maybe to change it up a bit that it was going to happen here, and I was like, stop it.
Because they were talking about the rabbits. And it was a good setup for it because Joel's like, put that back. We can get our own rabbit. So that would have been a good setup for it. But I guess if you're going sequentially, like we still have plenty of time for that to happen. So they're in this dining hall. Joel and Tommy are catching up, but we get an Easter egg here that is all but confirmed. And I will say, like Mr. Last of Us, I didn't catch this at all when I was watching. I didn't even think about it for a second.
Okay, I'll let you finish that thought, but that makes me happy because I was like,
dude, I didn't think about it for a second. So this isn't going to make any sense to you if you did not play The Last of Us Part 2. This is a character from Part 2. Ellie and Joel are sitting there eating, and all of a sudden there's this also young girl sitting there staring, watching them eat. And Ellie has this visceral reaction. She's like, what the fuck? Why is she staring at us? Like, she gets angry, and you get to see, they're using it to show the dynamic of Ellie and how she doesn't really fit in with a society at this point. Everyone's kind of civilized here. You can look at somebody and it's not an offensive thing. They're kind of showing that dynamic. But it's this young girl with, now that I've thought about it and looked at it a few times, a very, very specific look and a very, very specific wardrobe. And again, if you've played The Last of Us Part 2, you know that character is Dina, which happens to be a very important character in Part 2, a very prominent character in the story. So cool to set that up here. Again, I didn't think about that at all until the end of the episode, and I saw somebody talk about it.
Dude, I was waiting for it in the recap. Of course, they didn't talk about it because if you haven't played Part 2, like, what? You can't bring this up. But I was stoked. So that happened, and you know what? I gotta say, I've been engaged with all these episodes, but how we talked about on Busy Sticks, my dynamic with Hogwarts Legacy, where I'm like, phones away. I want to be focused on this. I really want to be mindful of what's going on detail by detail. That's how I was with this episode more than any other previous 5. So that glance happens, and I was like, that's it. That's it right there. And I love that stuff. I love that stuff, whether we're getting these little Easter eggs or things that are going to continue on in prominent detail. But folks, that's a character you're going to get to know very well.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, like, if you're going to go to Jackson in this story, why wouldn't you show somebody who's going to be in Jackson 4 years from now, right? And I don't know, my head just wasn't even there. I wasn't even thinking about other characters from Part 2 that we could see in Jackson. Man, like, Jesse and Dina, like all these characters from Part 2. I'm like, my brain wasn't even there. I was not even thinking about it. So that's so cool that they did that. But moving on a little bit, just so good to see these two live a bit of normalcy in Jackson, right? You get to see Joel and Tommy catching up. They're sitting behind the bar, having a drink, reminiscing. Like, there's no threat. There's no stress, right? Almost a little bit like Billstown, but like when Bill and Frank were living in it. But that sense of normalcy, it's just very good to see these two characters do that kind of stuff. Ellie gets a haircut from Maria. She goes to the movie theater. She watches a movie. They're celebrating Christmas in Jackson. There's Christmas trees up, right? Like, that kind of stuff is just very cool to get like a quick pause from the apocalypse. You know, a lot of shit's coming. You know, it's not going to end this way, but it's cool to see them kind of get to enjoy the fruits of all that.
I couldn't agree more. It was nice to see that and feel that. And there's some revelations here I'm sure you're going to talk about shortly. But all of it just felt good because, like, even as viewers, we could breathe for a bit. Or how about when they enter the town and Joel and Tommy see each other? Like, what a pure reunion that is. That hug is so sweet and so heartfelt. And then fast forward to what you were mentioning, John, with just sitting in the bar, having a drink. Like, again, this show just feel like constantly I'm in someone's shoes, and in this case, obviously, it's Pedro Pascal's. But having that drink and even them talking about the kind of liquor they're having in everyday stuff before they get into the serious stuff, all of it is really, really awesome. And just again, well executed.
For sure. We just mentioned Tommy in that reunion. We've got a couple of scenes coming up with Tommy. Let's talk about Tommy. We've got a different take, and it's a different take because Joel's a different take. The Joel and Tommy are Hispanic in this show, which they're not in the games. They're two white men. It makes a lot of sense that two guys from Texas would be Hispanic. So if you're upset about that, go touch some grass. But we're getting a portrayal from Gabriel Luna. I thought did an awesome job as Tommy. I thought that was so like we've sung our praises about Pedro Pascal and how well he's done as Joel. I thought every scene they had conversations together, my eyes are on Gabriel Luna. He's stealing the scenes. Like he was awesome.
You know what? He has found a really nice line, just like Pedro has, I think, with creating your own character, but also calling back to the original, because there were a few times where I swear I could have closed my eyes and he sounded like Tommy from the game.
That brotherly cadence and that southern draw is just there. Like that, like there's no changing. They've mastered that. And again, it just goes to show you, what those two original actors did in the game as well. But like, yeah, like for sure, that is Tommy and that is Joel, and they're having that conversation. So quick aside with like how accurate Pedro Pascal has been with Joel. Every time we watch an episode, my wife and I, and something big from the game is reproduced, I show her that scene on YouTube. I'm like, you just watched that episode. We got to watch how it happened in the game. So I'll pull it up on YouTube. And after this last episode, she's like, I cannot believe how much Joel looks and sounds just the same. I'm like, they freaking crushed it. Like Pedro Pascal's crushing it.
It's true, and they've got the right actor. But even more importantly than that, I think, is they have. Because Neil Druckmann is so involved with this. And if he's not, maybe it's not quite as close. But what a nice thing to have that influence from the video game, to have it so tight-knit, but still have it be its own thing. Because I still look at these guys as Troy Baker and Pedro Pascal, their own iterations of this character that blend beautifully and kind of meet in the middle.
Yeah, and it's so weird. We're like, The Last of Us, which is just such a profoundly important thing to me when it comes to, media I've experienced. Like it might be the number one, like, most influential piece of media in my life. And I think about Joel and Ellie, and I'm starting to think about Pedro and Bella now. Like that's so cool. It's so awesome. Like as much as I enjoyed the Uncharted movie, when I think of Nathan Drake, I just think of Nolan North's Nathan Drake, right? I don't think of Tom Holland, even though I had plenty of fun with that movie. I say Nathan Drake, I think about Nolan North's Nathan Drake, because that's who Nathan Drake is, right? And that's how good he did, and how much he perfected that role, and how much that they didn't really replicate that with the movie. It's the opposite here, man. Like two of the most important characters and fictional characters in my life that like I see it all now. It's so cool.
It is a funny contrast to think about, because I love that Uncharted movie. It's a fun popcorn flick, and it's just different. Like I'm with you. Tom Holland, I adore on the big screen, but I had fun watching him play a young Nathan Drake. He's not Nathan Drake who I think of, but this, you could probably toss a coin, and I've never felt like that in any other medium where you've had numerous actors or voice actors or actresses portray characters, and them, I'm like, Yep, they converge. They meet in the middle somewhere.
Especially when I feel such a strong connection to the original casting. Especially when like they did such a great job, and like you can never take away what Troy and Ashley brought to those characters. And again, they'll always be the originals, but so cool to see that we're having this conversation even.
Dude, for sure, those characters don't exist without those performances. They don't reach that level of legendary without those performances. So to have these two do what they're doing is just off the charts. Right.
And again, they're drawing so much from those original performances that, like, yes, of course, like that, goes without saying that we wouldn't have A without B here. So we get some conversations. Joel and Tommy are hanging out at the bar, and I don't know if this comes at the bar or not, but Tommy reveals that he is expecting a baby. His wife Maria is pregnant. Is that in the game? I can't remember if Maria was pregnant in the game.
I want to say it is, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know for a fact if that's part of the what's going on in the game, but they certainly didn't handle it in the same way if that's the case, because there's a real focus here to Joel's reaction or you might say lack of reaction here. And and it all comes back to Joel's trauma. So Tommy tells Joel, "I'm expecting a child. She's due in a couple of months now," and I think Tommy says something like, "Let's hope I'm a good dad," and Joel says, "We'll wait and see." He like, oh, what a terrible response to your brother just sharing the news that he's going to be a father, and you saying, "Well, let's wait and see if you're going to be like." And again, we know that's Joel's trauma peeking through from what's happened with Sarah. Like anytime you talk about children, and again, this will be like a niece or a nephew to him. Like this hits real close to home, and that conversation is real awkward, real quick, and it's heated. It's a intense conversation. So we move past that. I forget kind of how we get to the point where they have their second conversation. I think that Tommy kind of apologizes. Tommy says like, "Hey, like I know you're happy for me. It's just hard for you to, it's hard for you. Like I understand what you went through. I was right there with you, obviously. Like I know it's hard for you. I know you're happy for me." Then we get something that we did not get from Joel in the game. We get Joel breaking down. So in the game, what's coming up here is that Joel is about to ask Tommy to take over this mission, to take over Ellie because he doesn't think he's the best person for it. And that theme is apparent in the game, but it doesn't happen the same way. Joel breaks down with Tommy. He almost starts crying. Like there's tears, there's emotion, and he has this this revelation and this confession that like, I have dreams, and in those dreams, I fail Sarah, and I fail Ellie, and I fail Tess, and I just keep failing. And when we had this confrontation with your people, the dog, if it would have ripped her apart, I would have done nothing, and I would have failed her again, right? He just keeps thinking of himself as a failure, and he's literally having like this very, very emotional breakdown. And it's powerful, and it's like an incredible way to tell the story, and it's not what we got in the game. In the game, we understand that Joel wants to have Ellie go with Tommy because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And we know that guilt is there. And we know that Joel thinks he's a failure and he's not ready to try again. But it's behind this shell of masculinity. He never breaks down like he does in the show. So that's a huge, huge change. And I think they did a good job showing us a different kind of a Joel.
I think that works here. I'm not saying it wouldn't work in the video game, but let's face it, as much as I think we'd agree that video game production and just graphics and visuals look outstanding, there's a little bit of a translation still here where like emotion comes across differently on the TV screen.
Especially in 2013.
Especially in 2013.
Maybe in part 2 they could have pulled it off.
I think you're right. That gap is definitely narrowed. But here we are. You've got the live action. It works. And by the way, vulnerability is a big thing. Masculinity is awesome, but guess what? So is vulnerability. And right, like those can go hand in hand. That it can be very manly to be like that, to open up, to say, yeah, I'm this tough guy. I'm taking care of this girl that is basically my daughter at this point, or a daughter figure. Even though I had this horrible past where something happened to my actual daughter, I need help, and I might not be the right guy for the job, and I'm asking you as my brother to see this through, to help her, to make sure she's okay, to make sure you come back, and to make sure, hey, by the way, we're trying to develop this vaccine for humanity, right? Based on what is going on in Ellie's system. So there's a lot of that there, and I think that is really appreciated. It comes across. It's okay to be like that. And it can also come from a position of strength. So all of that is what's running through my head as that sequence kind of plays itself out.
For sure. And again, I stress it, like it's the same motive that we got from the game, but he just wears it on his sleeve in the show like he didn't in the game.
They go for it here. They absolutely, like, there's no hiding it.
No, exactly. A different take, but same outcome.
Exactly.
So the next scene we get is a little bit of a confrontation. We find out that Ellie overheard that conversation. She heard Joel talk to Tommy about how he wants to, hand her off, and whatever his reasons may be. All Ellie hears from that is, "You want to abandon me, like you want to quit this mission. You want to get rid of me. We've been together for 3+ months and we've built this relationship, but you want to just abandon me like everybody else in my life." Like, and Ellie's really pissed about it. And this is where we get the recreation of one of the most impactful scenes in the video game, and I think will probably serve as the same in the show. where Ellie full on confronts Joel. Joel says, "I'm not the right guy for this. Tommy knows the path. See, I'm older, like stuff like that. You'll be better off with him." And Ellie breaks down. She says, "Everybody in my life has either died or left me. Everybody except for you." And she pushes him. She gets angry. She pushes him. And you keep telling me that I'd be better off with somebody else, but the truth is I'd be more scared. And that is line for line the way Ashley Johnson delivered it. And like that's where I see Bella Ramsey like understanding what this character is supposed to be and paying homage, because that is a exact replica of Ashley Johnson's delivery of this line. Watch the two side by side. It's incredible. Same thing with Joel, with Pedro and the way he handles that. But man, the scene is so impactful. She starts to bring up Sarah and Joel. I wish they would have brought the line back. You're treading on some mighty thin ice. Like that, for some reason, that line hits really well. He doesn't say that. He just says, watch, I forget what he says here. Pick your next words carefully or whatever, because he is not ready to talk about Sarah. But yeah, that's one of the most emotional confrontations we'll get between our two protagonists.
I think you said everything spot on there for what I would say. It, whether it's the game or the show, it is that push that I think is the moment where it pushes me over the edge, no pun intended. Because like their connection is built up in these 6 episodes, which is kind of a short period of time, really, but it is strong. They're meant to be together. They're meant to go on this journey together. Wherever that ends, we'll see, obviously. But it just comes across as a cry for help and like, please don't make me do this, whatever that the end of this journey looks like. And it's right. Just executed well again. I love when they go shot for shot here.
Yeah,
they needed to do that.
I love it, and I think that as much as we talk about Pedro, we talk about Bella and how the performances are incredible. I think Bella really steals the scene here. I think this is her performance. Pedro is great. He replicates what Troy Baker does very well in that scene. But man, Bella really crushes it, and like she makes this her own. But she also, like I said before, pays homage to how impactful Ashley Johnson's performance was in this original scene. And it ends in a very heated way. Like it ends in a okay, in the morning we go our separate ways. You're gonna keep talking about Sarah like that. You're gonna be disrespectful. Whatever the cadence is. Like it is a we go our separate ways in the morning. That's kind of the way it happens in the game. Little variance to the circumstances, but whatever. It's telling the same story. So the next morning, we get up. Ellie's ready to go. She's got her backpack. She's sitting in this room. There's a knock on the door, and you can tell that she's just hoping it's Joel. There's this look on her face where she's just got a little bit of hope. She says, "Come on in," and it's Tommy, and you can just see everything deflate from her. Like, this is okay. I guess this is really it. So her and Tommy head down to the horses, and who do we see? Joel, who's still hanging out, hasn't left yet, hasn't stolen the horse, even though Tommy says I would have given it to you. He wasn't able to bring himself to leave, and he obviously thought a lot about it. There was a scene that I forgot to mention where after that argument, Joel leaves the house there, and he sees somebody that looks like his daughter Sarah, and he has this flashback to Sarah, and that might be where the revelation is had, where it's like, maybe this is the bad call. Maybe I should not abandon this girl who has become a daughter figure to me. So that next morning we get that. Joel is by a horse, and he said, "I still think I'm the wrong person to go with, but I'm going to leave this up to you." And before he can finish the sentence, Ellie shoves her backpack at him and said, "Let's go. Shut up. Let's go." So that's just beautiful. It's excellent. That's just, that's their, that's their relationship. Those are the characters. This is a nothing scene or point. I just love the brotherly relationship. Like, if you have a brother, you understand where this comes from and like how these conversations go. When they're leaving, Tommy's got a rifle slung around his shoulder, and Joel says, "Can I borrow that?" And Tommy says, "Of course." And then Joel has to get this little jab in that says, because if you remember, Maria took mine. And Tommy's like, "Joel, I already said yes." like, why are we having this? Like, why are we bickering? Shut up. I already said yes. You don't have to. Like, just a really, really cool developmental brotherly moment. Like, that's the stuff that you deal with as a brother. Like, I already said yes. Shut up.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Good dynamic there.
It's really, really cool. And again, we got that all throughout the episode with Tommy and Joel. That relationship is incredible. I thought it would have ended there. I did not think we were going to progress. I thought the episode was going to come to an end with them leaving Jackson, with the revelation that Joel and Ellie are going to stay together. But that's not the case. They head to where they think the Firefly base may be. They head down that path a little bit. They go to the university. And this is where I say, man, like, what an example of how much shorter a piece of this story could be without gameplay. Because when you experience this in the game, you're at the university. You're at the university for a while. You're exploring this university. You see the monkeys like you do in the show. Like, it's a cool thing. Like, it's awesome. But you're exploring. You're opening up like paths. You gotta like get electricity to gates and stuff like that. And then there's like enemy encounters. Like it takes a while to get through the university. But we get this in like 3 minutes basically, where they get to the university. They see some monkeys. They find out the Fireflies are not there, and they just get ambushed by a group of thugs. And that ambush is a pretty important ambush because at the end of it, Joel has a knife in his stomach. So they successfully.
I gotta say, John, both stabs, if you will, are very, very uncomfortable to look at. But like, that is so memorable from the game, how he falls on that spike, as opposed to this. Like that, I'm like, it pains me so bad every time I play that game.
Oh, for sure. Like, physically, like, no, they do such a good job in the game of like making that such a like visceral. It's the direction of the scene. Like that's a painful scene.
The psychological thought behind it too is brutal to me. Like, oh gosh, that would be, but like it through my back, all this stuff.
Yeah, I hate
it. Look that scene up if you haven't played it. Not that a knife is much better, by the way, but that works better again on TV because we don't know anything's happened and they're staring at each other and she basically looks down and then Joel has to realize that he's got that knife in his gut.
Yeah,
and
in the game,
it's a pivotal point.
It is. And in the game, there's so much gameplay that builds up to the reasoning and like the fact that Ellie's kind of out of the scene for a second and like Joel's up on a ladder. Like, gameplay sets up the way that went down in the game, like, obviously. So in the show, that this is a quick encounter. You've got to figure it out and you've got to make it as impactful. And I think that they did an awesome job. Joel gets stabbed, doesn't realize it, and they both kind of look down together and realize, oh shit, this is not good.
There's a part of me that will be depressed when I inevitably play this on PS6, realizing that I'm spending 2 hours in this university when it was 3 minutes on HBO. So
right.
Feel like, what am I doing here? Even looking at all these logs and the monkeys.
Then the next release of the game is going to be based on the TV show, so hopefully it'll be 3 minutes there too. HBO's The Last of Us, the game. Can't wait.
I thought that's what we were getting with this pre-release. I gotta say,
that would have been
PS5.
That would have been wild. So Joel has been stabbed. They successfully get away from these thugs. They realize that the Fireflies are not, in fact, at this university like they think. They're riding away on the horse. They took care of the thugs. They had no real weapons. They are not a real threat. But Joel is very much stabbed and very much in bad shape, and he falls off the horse, and things are not looking good for Joel. Ellie, she gets over him. She says, it's another emotional scene, another great performance by Bella Ramsey, but like, I can't do this without you. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to do any of this. Like, I need you. Don't do this to me. And then the episode just does the thing and ends.
Great end off for us there. We see the preview for what's happening next week. So really, we're probably going to have to wait 2 weeks until we find out what happens.
Get back to the story.
To Joel.
If there was one cliffhanger, so you're telling me that we've got 9 episodes. If you were to make me bet on what one cliffhanger I could guarantee was going to happen, it'd be this one. I would have put all of the money on any story beat that could happen in this show. Like, this is the guaranteed cliffhanger episode.
I agree. This is where we transition here. We go into the third act shortly, and a lot of things happen, which we'll get to in the coming weeks. But great send off. Again, they leveled up here. This may be my favorite episode yet. We'll have to let everything kind of simmer and stew over the next few weeks, especially once the show ends for season 1. See how it all shakes out. But man, yeah. Gotta say, man, looking forward to next week. I'm really excited for a lot of sequences we're going to get in that mall. Like, I'm excited to see them recreate a lot of what happened in the Left Behind story.
I am too.
And just see it in TV form.
for someone who is like, world's biggest Last of Us fanboy, unapologetically, I love this franchise and these games. I've only played Left Behind once. So like I have only experienced that story once, and it was back when it first came out on the original copy of the PS3 game, I think. Maybe
Funny enough, I played this on PS4 and PS5, but not PS3.
Funny. I may have actually played. I may have not. I definitely didn't play it on the PS3. I played it on the PS4 remaster. That's where I played it because I think I didn't even own my PS3 still when they released the DLC for Left Behind. I bought it for The Last of Us and sold it before that came out. So yes, when they did the Last of Us re-release for PS4, it included Left Behind. That was the first time I played it, but that was still what 2017, 2018? No, not even 20. So 14 or 15.
2013, right?
Yeah, so it was 14.
The original. Yeah, it was 14.
It was basically the year of, if not shortly after the PS4 release. So, yeah, so it's been close to a decade since I've played Left Behind.
Even in the quick glimpses we've seen here of the visuals for next week's episode, it's going to be something special. So, as I've been telling all my friends who have not played the game, buckle up. We're going to get some emotion that is akin to the level we saw in episode 3, and probably what we saw with Henry and Sam.
I think so. But man, we're making our way. 3 episodes left. I'm so bittersweet. It's bittersweet, man. Like it's been such a ride. It's been so good. We keep saying every week that it might be the best episode yet, but it's coming to an end. I just wish season 2 was ready right now.
You know what's different for me, which is funny. I think about a show that I just like could not wait to talk about week to week, and that was Obi-Wan Kenobi for us last year. Very different shows, obviously, but when we had that, I was like, there's one left. That's it. I'm not saying I'm happy that this only has 3 left, but like emotionally, from a weight standpoint, every episode I feel fulfilled, even if that is not necessarily happiness, by the way. So the way I look at this is like 3 episodes left. I can make that because I go into an episode. I'm like, feel like I got to train to like bring myself and build myself up to handle what is about to happen on a given week. So right now I'm like, all right, 3 episodes left. That's good. I could take a break after that.
I think that has to do with the pacing and the fact that like as people who know this story, it feels perfect. Like there's nothing that I couldn't fit into these last 3 episodes. Whereas like Obi-Wan, where there's a lot that we wanted. Like the story was unclear. It was all new stuff. So we're like, oh my God, let this last forever. Like let's get all the Obi-Wan, revelations and give me all the Easter eggs and all the confrontations. Yeah. Whereas in this one, like, yes, 3 episodes, 100% perfect. It's perfect. Yes. Last Behind plus, or I'm sorry, the Left Behind DLC plus the last 2 episodes. It's literally perfect.
It is, and I didn't know that we'd be at this point come 3 episodes left, but we are. So that's very rewarding. But we're gonna wrap up this episode of our recap of HBO's The Last of Us, episode 6. I almost said part 6. That's technically wrong. And can't wait for what we're gonna get here in the final 3 episodes. Let us know your thoughts. Whether you watch this live at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse, you watch back at youtube.com/thegeekiverse, or you listen to us on podcast services around the globe. John, any final wrapping thoughts here?
No, we covered it all. What a great episode. Maybe our favorite yet. And I can't wait to see the way they adapt this next episode to live action. And I can't wait for this to wrap up and to see what the reactions on social media are going to be.
Can't wait. Tune in. John and I will be here. Hopefully, Tim and JT are able to join us as well to have a nice discussion on episode 7. But for John, I am Josiah. Thanks for tuning into this episode of HBO's The Last of Us recap. We will see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week.